This is the Unstuck Movement. These are true testimonies of breakthrough. I'm your host, Rob Z. Today we have the wonderful and amazing Carrie Lingenfelter with us on the show. And Carrie, I love to jump in with a powerful question right off the jump.
Sure.
We're talking about parenting. We're talking about spirited children on this episode and how to be a better parent for them. So I want to know from you, what was a turning point in your parenting as to how you approached your children? What was the turning point that made you decide I need to really change my parenting style?
Yes, my turning point was right. Oh, thanks so much, Rob, for having me here. I'm really excited. And my turning point was when I was previously a mom or previously a teacher and speech therapist. And I was sitting in the closet with 8 different sleep gadgets for my son. He was my firstborn. And I was on a bouncy ball with him in his Magic Merlin sleep suit with his little binky, and I was trying like crazy to follow this sleep schedule and trying like crazy to nurse him because I had all these ideas of what parenting was going to be like. I thought there was this box of perfection that I was going to have to live in. And so I was sitting in the closet, bouncing a little crazy, trying to get my son down, and he was just staring up at me with these bright blue eyes in my eyes, trying to connect with me. And I was in this version of what I thought parenting was supposed to look like. I was in this version of what I thought I had to do as a mom to be the perfect version of a parent. And he was trying to connect with me and tell me, Mom, stop trying to follow the books, the sleep schedules, all of the sleep gadgets. Just connect with me. I'm going to show you what I need. You got to follow my lead. You need to put me down to sleep when I'm ready and stop trying to be this perfect version. So that was my point where I realized I didn't really necessarily need all of these tools. I could parent him in the way that I felt was right and finding my own voice as well.
So important. So this is a very timely episode for me. I have a month and a half old right now, so I'll be taking copious notes as we go through this discussion and understanding how this turned around for you. So this is awesome, right? I love this conversation because this is so important because especially with social media and technology today, there's so much information on how to do parenting perfectly. And it looks like everybody on social media is the most amazing parent that ever lived. So
yes.
we need to be able to learn from them.
Yes.
So I'm so excited to dive into this. This is the Unstuck Movement, right? The point of this platform is to give people examples that breakthrough is possible because it's happened to other people. And I think as parents, we need those breakthrough moments, which it sounds like you've really had one of those for yourself. This platform is sponsored by the Connected Leaders Academy. Check out connectedleadersacademy.com. Carrie Lingenfelter is a former educator and mother of 2, mentoring parents on how to raise conscious, connected, and empowered children. She specializes in supporting parents of gifted, spirited, and highly sensitive kids. So, Carrie, what changed, right? You're on the bouncy ball. You've got the 8 million apps and things you think you need to have to make yourself the perfect parent so your kids have the perfect situation as they're newborns and growing up. What changed from that moment? How did you start doing things differently?
It's when you see yourself as being human, right, Rob? And you're holding this tiny little human that has succumbed to you, right? You possess the world for them. And understanding this piece of I am human too, and I can make mistakes. I can follow my kid. Maybe I put him down too late one time and he then is off for the rest of the day. Sure, I made a mistake and I can learn from it. And as my kids who are now 9 and 6, I have a 9-year-old son and a 6-year-old daughter. And boy, do I miss those month-old days. They're sleep deprived, but they go fast. And so understanding this piece of it's okay to be human. It's okay to be real. It's okay to be raw. It's okay to cry as a mom sometimes. I don't have to look like this rosy lens filtered version of parenting that Instagram shows us. Yes, maybe those parents are living a rosy, perfect version. I have not seen that version. I've had moments of crying with my kids when their sock feels uncomfortable and mom's energy is just gone at that moment. But I'm showing my kids that it's okay to live passionately and it's okay to be human and connect with other humans in those times. So oftentimes when we have those moments when we're in the closet crying or trying to get our kid to sleep, we feel alone and isolated, and we feel like, why doesn't my parenting experience look like what everybody else's does? Why is mine a little bit harder? I didn't realize my two kids were really sensitive kids, and I didn't even realize for a long time, like, I'm a very sensitive parent and I need to think about my energy levels and recharging my life and giving myself self-care, which is a huge buzzword on social media right now, is self-care and the inner child within us. So all of these pieces are pieces that I'm now working on and have been working on for a while, and I love sharing with other parents because we do see the perfect version of parenting so often still. But I think it's starting to, I guess the glass house is starting to come down a little bit.
Yeah, well, especially like it seems like when you have a newborn. By the way, I'm a much bigger fan of the phase past the newborn phase. All the other phases, really, I think is maybe this is most dads. Most dads are bigger
Yeah.
fans of. I have a 10-year-old son also loving the
Oh,
phase he's
okay.
in now because we get to like
Yeah.
hang out, and do stuff together, and have similar
Yeah.
interests. And it's to me the older my kids get, the more connected I am to them. But moms love the
Hmm.
newborn phase,
Yeah.
nurturing, just taking
Yeah.
care of them. For me, it's like, I don't know what even is going on right now. What am I supposed to be doing? What
Yeah.
why does my
Yeah.
back hurt so bad? Those sorts of things.
Yeah.
So but I really feel like it's funny too, whenever you are with new parents and their young children, their
Yeah.
kids are usually doing pretty well when people are around. It's like whenever you're alone with them, that's when there's a lot of crying. There's a lot of the things that go wrong go wrong. So
Yes.
I feel like as parents, we only see that one side of our kids when we're
Yes.
alone with them, and we
It's
all
so
have to
true.
expect that. We all have to like just understand that's the case. When I take him out in public, most of the time he's going to be fine, and then when we get
Yeah.
back, it's going to be a whole different story, right? So
Yeah.
not always the
Yeah.
case, but I think that's a piece of the journey too.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about the spirited child, right? This word
Yeah.
spirited sounds to me like a great word. Spirit, great word. Spirited
Hmm.
means you're full of spirit, you're full of life,
Hmm.
great word,
Hmm.
but it's
Yeah.
also a challenging thing. So what does that
Yes.
word mean to you?
So for me, I'm using it in reference to so many of the kids that are born today with this zest for life and this energy that comes with so many of these kids being born. The gifted piece is knowing knowledge and receiving knowledge so quickly. And my two, that's definitely a strength for them. And my husband always says, "Wow, our kids are really energetic." And I keep telling him, well, I worked with children. I know what energetic kids are, and our kids, yes, they bring some energy, but it's more like a passion for life and energy. It's this zest for wanting to get out there and find their own passions. And my son, when my daughter came home from the hospital, she was in the NICU, so it was a couple of days before she came home, and he was looking down at her and rocking her, and he said, "I am ready for you to get up and walk. Like, I want to play with you. So can you get up and start moving now? Mom, I want her to walk." And he was 3. We had to explain to him, like, it's a process, buddy. It's going to be a year before she walks, probably. Although it was only 11 months for her because she was a little sibling. So watch that little sibling coming along. But they want these things now, and I think part of these kids that are growing up so sensitive and so gifted and spirited is trying to help them become the best version of themselves without losing that spirited side. So, trying to help them learn certain constraints or conforming to certain pieces of society, but also allowing them to have passions for life and allowing them to teach us things in life. I talk about following our children a lot. And I mentioned when I was in the closet and I looked down and he's telling me, like, "What do I need, mom? This is what I need." Following our kids in that our kids are going to tell us what their energy levels are. Our kids are going to tell us, "Hey, I had a really hard day at school and I don't want to go to taekwondo today." And I'm not there energetically. Maybe they're not saying it like that. Maybe they're saying, "I don't want to go today, mom. It was a long day." And we're trying to teach them how to communicate that without squelching their spirit, which would be go to Taekwondo. I paid $150 a month or whatever you pay. Like, it's expensive, all these activities. You want to force them to go, but they're telling you where they're at. And so meeting them and creating that respect and creating that relationship together, that's following our children. That's knowing when to listen to them when they're telling us what they need.
Yeah, because there's a balance there, isn't there? Because also we have to push our kids to do things. So my son, who's 10, he doesn't necessarily, as far as like physical sports go, he's not a big fan. But I know that doing something physical, and we all have, especially when you have energy as a kid, you've got to like channel that energy somewhere to get that out of you. It's going to reduce anxiety. It's going to reduce stress. It's going to build connection with other kids. So how do you find that balance between, oh yeah, you need to, okay, I understand today, this is the time to understand that this is where we're at right now, but also we still have to be pushing them. And there's a, delicate balance of helping them find those things that they really love, helping them find those things that are going to help them to become who they're created to become, giving them that push while also understanding when to put the brakes on. So how do you find that balance?
Yeah. And that can be a tricky situation, right, Rob? Like, one day they are ready for Taekwondo, another day they're not. And you're also reading your kid. This is part of connecting with them, is understanding, is this an energy version? Maybe they're really tired. Maybe they're getting over a cold. Is this I'm being a little bit lazy version and I need to push him today? So it's really being in tune with your kid and knowing these different levels of what your kid looks like. It's knowing, is it his system that's overwhelmed, or is he feeling shy today? Maybe he doesn't want to go. And I do need to give him a little bit of a push. I've even started communicating with my 6 and 9-year-olds, especially my 9-year-old, about this, because my son is not, he calls it, I'm not really into ball sports, Mom. And that's just his jam. He'd rather sit in his room and play with Legos all day. That's him. So we do have to push him. And I talk to him about it. I tell him, Mom and Dad are here in this life to support you. We're supporting you. But along with those lines, we are also knowing your growth and knowing where you're at. We are going to be challenging you too. We are going to be watching your energy levels. And when you're feeling empowered that day, when you're having a good day, we're going to challenge you a little bit. My son doesn't like to hike, especially on the weekend. He wants to sit and do Legos all in the morning. So my husband and I, we talked to him Friday night beforehand. Hey, guess what? Tomorrow morning, we are going to challenge you a little bit. We're going to go for a family hike and you're going to love it. And I know the transition may be a little bit tricky for you, but once we get out there, you're going to love it. And we work and we stay calm and we switch off. My husband and I switch off. Sometimes the challenge to get him out there. Once we're out there, he has his hands up to the sky and he's saying, this is the best day ever. I love this. But, we're kind of greasing the wheel a little bit. We're setting it up the night before. We're telling him, we're speaking to him like a little bit of an adult, right? Or finding the level. For my 6-year-old, I would probably level it down a little bit, but I would still explain to her what was going on and how we are part of growing up is teaching them how to surpass challenges. I agree with you for sure.
Yeah, I think that's this is really funny because my son, there's an ongoing joke in our relationship that he never wants to go do anything, and then once we go do a thing, he never wants to leave that thing. I'm like, so remember, like, whenever we go do this thing, you're going to end up having a lot of fun, and you're not going to want to stop. And this is a repeating pattern. So when you're like being stagnant and like putting your foot down, like, I'm not going to do this. Remember, 90% of the time afterwards, you're like, you know what, Dad? That was a lot of fun. That's what you usually end up saying, or you don't want to leave or whatever it might be. So just keep that in mind. And also as a parent, it's like this balancing act of like, okay, listen, I'm in charge and I know what is good. And I think this comes from having that relationship with our kids, right? So actually having a real relationship and understanding of who they are, and they know that we know who they are. And I guess it takes a while. Whenever you get older, you look back and you're like, oh, maybe some parents didn't have your best interest in mind, but my parents did have my best interest in mind. They just weren't as communicative as would have been helpful, I suppose. I also may have been way too sensitive. You mentioned about sensitive kids. Like, I was a highly sensitive kid for sure.
Yeah.
So what led you to doing what you're doing. Like I always, this podcast is all about making your mess your message. So the mess that you had usually becomes the message that you spread to the world. Was that your situation? Were you that highly
Oh,
sensitive
yes.
kid?
Oh, yes. And, I have to say what you just said. I was too much of a highly sensitive kid. There isn't such a thing, Rob. Like, you are who you are. You can't help who you're born to be, right? And I always thought, gosh, why am I so sensitive? Oh, I just wish I could stop being so sensitive. But I
I
always want to
still
tell, and
think
I
that
actually,
that's still what happens.
you have to listen to my episode I just released today with Melissa Schwartz. We talked about sensitive parents raising sensitive kids and tools to help with our sensitive kids. So you might really enjoy it.
Cool.
But part of that is just living in who we are, right? Being proud of being a highly sensitive person. And some people choose not to label themselves. I find that it helps me to understand, like, this is who I was. And guess what? There's actually a lot of highly sensitive people out there. And I love to tell parents, this is actually why I started the podcast, was connecting with other parents so you don't feel lonely in being a sensitive parent. So you don't feel lonely in raising sensitive kids and having kids that have a little bit extra. Somebody on the podcast that I just released, Melissa had mentioned that you could be either raising the Porsche or the Prius. And the Porsche needs the extra special type of gas. The Porsche sometimes has to go into the shop a little bit more often, where the Prius is a little more steady and easier to deal with, right?
Hmm.
And it's okay to be the Porsche. Don't feel bad about the Porsche, because guess what? The Porsche, maybe it has a really good, I was going to say, I'm trying to think of an appropriate version for parenting with the Porsche, but I think that it's very steady in the way that it drives, right? So a Porsche, it's okay to be that version of yourself, because it gives you a superhuman version of parenting. You are such an amazing version of parent because you have that extra ability to tune in with your child. So
Mm-hmm.
whereas we think that maybe it could be a negative piece, it's actually this positive, amazing piece that we are given as highly sensitive people raising highly sensitive kids.
Very true. And these sort of things can be out of balance when we don't have a good relationship with ourselves, right? So if I don't
Mm-hmm.
understand
Yeah.
who I am, and I don't
Yeah.
have integrity of, like, for myself, it's going to be really hard for me to. This is when coddling comes into play. This is when there's gifts and curses to everything. So if we're sensitive, there's a gift to that. There's also a curse. We overuse that sensitivity. It can mean that we don't ever let our kid ever do anything, and they kind of
Sure.
run our lives
Yeah.
because we are too sensitive to what they should be doing or shouldn't be doing, and we want to just make sure that they're okay and they're happy. And if that's the case, and you have a kid who doesn't like to necessarily, you have a kid who's not necessarily gung-ho to go into group settings, that kid can end up sitting in his room his whole entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's not
Yeah.
what they needed. But
Yeah.
at the same time, finding that balance of, okay, I know who I am. So I know that sometimes I'm going to be a little bit too, I'm speaking myself here. I can be a little bit too lax. I can be a little bit too understanding. So I need to check myself in that area, not just for my son or my kids, but for me too. Like, why
Mm-hmm.
do I find myself ending up in a funk, or why do I find myself ending up in certain ways? Because I'm
Yeah.
not pushing myself. And this isn't like a bad thing. I'm not saying pushing like a bad thing. It's pushing it as a good thing, a loving thing. If you love yourself and if you love other people, you are going to nudge them in positive directions to do good things that are healthy for them.
Yeah.
And I feel that's a very important piece of the puzzle, because we have to be able to incorporate that into our lives and see our shortcomings and know how to leverage ourselves against our shortcomings.
Yes. Yes. There's a
So,
huge piece. Have you heard of the inner child work that a lot of people are doing, where you're looking back, if there's something that comes up for you as you're raising your kids that's challenging for you? Like, for me, it was making friends when I was a child. So then I became over parenting with my son. Like, oh, are you making friends? Let me help you make friends. I'm going to help you with this because I know that making friendship can be hard and you're really sensitive. And he's like, Mom, I have friends. Like, back off, Mom. Right. Yeah. So I had to look back at myself. Why am I doing this to my son? He has friends. He's happy. He's content. Like, what am I pushing on him? When really it was pieces of my own childhood, my own experience that I had to work on.
Very true. Very true indeed. Absolutely, Carrie. So we got to take a 60-second break. When we come back, though,
Sure.
I love learning about quotes that people love. And your quote that you gave me was from Helen Keller. Life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. I love this quote because I believe that life was created for adventure and we were created for adventure. So I want to know how you apply that quote to your parenting. We'll talk about that in 60 seconds.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're a growing tribe, a community of entrepreneurs all over the world, globally, all across the country, high performers, titans of industry. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to grow personally and professionally, scale your influence, develop your skill sets, move the needle in your business, more clients, more money, more profit, the bottom line, and of course, grow your circle and your network like never before, this is where you want to be. Join the Connected Leaders Academy today. We are scaling massively. We want to welcome you in. Check me out on Instagram and on Facebook, the @ JAESCO25. We look forward to having you join us. Take care.
So, Carrie, tell me about this. Life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all from Helen Keller. How do we embrace this adventure of life with our kids?
Definitely. So this is my year of passion and living passionately. My word for the year that I chose for 2024 was passion. And I launched my podcast this year, helping parents to live passionately with their kids and being the example for our kids, living passionately ourselves and following our passions and our dreams for ourselves is how we can help our kids to stay in that version when they grow up to be adults one day.
Mm-hmm.
So we are the example. They're watching us, and it's an amazing experience to be able to show your kid, hey, I'm human, and sometimes I stub my toe and cry. Sometimes I get out there and I live my adventure, and my kids, they know about my podcast and they're so excited. They're like, Mom, we love it, and we love that you're living this out loud and you're taking a risk and trying something new, and you're using the positive mindset that it's going to grow and you're going to do great. And so they're living it with me. I'm not giving them a filtered version of myself. I'm showing them what it's like to be a real human, to have ups and downs. I don't show them all the downs, obviously, right? We're going to give them their age appropriate version of it. But that's my version of the quote is taking a risk and living passionately.
Yeah, absolutely. Very necessary because I'm not talking badly about anybody, but I think we all know people who did not take those risks, had great passions in life, had callings in life, and didn't go after those callings. And you can always tell when somebody hasn't because it makes you a different kind of person. You're a bit more irritable. You're a bit more negative. You look at the world in you have a more dimly lit worldview of how things are. But whenever you do chase after the things that you know you're supposed to go after, that comes out, and that comes out into everybody around you. So I think of it this way too. Life is created to be an adventure. So chase the adventure. Yeah. Absolutely. Along with that, what comes with adventure is also the integrity that comes along with that. Right. So I feel when we break promises to ourselves, we are less of who we're supposed to be. And so and this is something you can't see, but you can feel. Nobody knows if I break a promise to myself, but you can feel it by the way I show up. So if I show up keeping promises to myself, then I'm going to be so much more for my kids. If I show up always breaking promises to myself, then I'm going to show up so much less for them. And I'm also going to drag them down with me because I'm going to be hard on them, just like I'm hard on me. And so that's a huge piece of that puzzle. So you being an entrepreneur and going off onto this podcast and creating this for yourself, it's so important for our kids to see that. But also, the personal development that you grow and you gain from going through what you're doing in your life. Talk about that level a little bit, just for anybody who maybe is starting their own thing or wants to start their own thing or they're in the midst of it. What has that personal development journey been like for you, and how has that impacted your parenting?
Yes. I was actually just talking to another podcaster that we love to sit back and chat sometimes and connect. And we were just talking about how with our podcast, we live passionately through it. And it's been an amazing experience because we get to talk to all of these specialists in these areas that we need to grow in ourselves. So I say, yes, I'm living consciously as a parent, but I'm not a perfect person, right? I'm not a perfect version. And part of being human is learning and growing. And so being able to talk to all of these amazing people and learning and growing every day has just been so empowering. And it just makes me want to continue doing it. I'm like, can I just keep scheduling all of these guests? Because it is so much fun. And we're learning so much and becoming such a different version. Our whole family is feeling that energy, and my kids feel that energy as well. It's when we're in that mindset, when we're in that flow state, we become a better version of ourselves, right? And our kids, especially our sensitive kids, they're picking that up. They're picking up that energy of, wow, she's really feeling it. And look at her, she's trying something that's hard. And sometimes she has hard days, but look at her go. And my daughter, I've had hard moments here and there, and I don't filter it often. And she said she's had moments where she'll say, Mom, you don't focus on what you don't want to see. You've got to flip that mindset, and you got to focus on what you do want to see. So it's really cool when your 6-year-old, brings what you've been telling them and what you've been living out loud for them, and they bring it to a new situation. It's like, okay, that right there, that teacher has really made that lesson come alive for them. And when you hear them teach it to you, they've learned it.
Yeah, it's great when you hear it back. You're like, oh, I'm doing something right. Okay, this is getting through a little bit. Yeah, things are headed in the right direction. Yeah, it's quite a victory. And that's something that not everybody needs to have kids, right? I feel like some people feel like everybody has to have a kid, but I feel like everybody should have a parental experience, whether or not they want to have kids or not, because of how much it changes you overnight. Having a kid changes you overnight. You literally, the way you see the world changes almost immediately. And so I want to just speak to that for a minute. What changed for you before having kids and after that was very foundational for you and who you are today?
I think it put everything into perspective. I was a specialist. I went into I was an early educator, elementary educator, and I was an early intervention speech therapist. So I was working with birth to 3. So I was like, oh, don't worry, hon. I've got this, to my husband. I've got this. We're going to be fine. It's going to be great. But as soon as I held that baby, I was like, oh, no, I don't know anything. I don't know how the hospital is letting us take him home. I don't know what we're supposed to do tonight. What do we do tomorrow? What does this look like? So I think it gives you a whole new version of perspective of, we think we know, but really becoming a parent just gives you this whole new game of starting over. And it's not just when they're born, it's like every single phase. As soon as you get used to that phase, the next phase comes. And then, so it's being okay with being a forever learner. It's being okay with making mistakes, admitting them, learning from them, and trying again. And obviously the good parents, you don't have to have children in order to have this growth mindset too. I've talked to so many people that say, I'm a dog mom and I'm an auntie. And, there's pieces that you're learning with those commitments and those relationships as well.
Yes, there is, but you will learn. So like whether you're a parent or say, I don't know what the situation is outside of being a parent with kids, like I don't know if it's adoption, fostering, big brothers, big sisters, things like that, where all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm responsible for somebody else. And just what it does to your heart, it just changes your heart and it changes how you look at the world. So that's why I encourage people, like we all need that, because I was a different person 10 years ago. I was a different person. And when my son was going to be born, I said to myself, like, I can't be who I am now. Cause I had, I had addiction issues, was very self-centered, just like things that, I mean, some people have kids and those things continue, but I
Mm-hmm.
think that
Mm-hmm.
when you have kids, it puts it in alignment of
Yeah.
like, oh, I can't. You become much more self-aware of like, oh no, I can't continue these things because I don't want these to rub off onto him or
Yes.
her. And so I just
Yeah.
there's something extremely powerful about that.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to mention to you also, because I think this is so important, and this is maybe a new parenting technique, but it should have always been one, was admitting when we make mistakes and
Yes.
apologizing to our kids, because there's a fine line
Yes.
here too, because I think some parents, especially dads, feel like apologizing to their kids or admitting they made a mistake is, you know, they should never do that because you're showing this like
Mm-hmm.
vulnerability or whatever. It shouldn't. I've heard, parents say like, well, it doesn't matter what my kids think. They have to listen to what I say, or, just random
Mm-hmm.
old school kind of thinking, things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
What would you say to that? Admitting your mistakes, apologizing when you're wrong, those sorts of things. How do you lead with that in your parenting?
I definitely agree. It's been something that we use in our house as well, for sure. And part of that is that showing that we're human, right? We're human, we're living this experience just like they are. And I before my 9-year-old, I had never been a parent. Yes, I had worked with so many families, but like you said, it's a completely new experience when you are the leader day to day. You are the one that sets up the mindset in the house, the energy in the house. And so when I would have moments, I mean, we're all human. So we have moments of tears. We have moments where maybe we snap more than we would have liked. Especially raising my two highly spirited, gifted kids. There's times when your energy levels are down here, but your day is still going. So I definitely agree with saying to my kiddo, I'll say to them, like, I'm so sorry that I had that moment where I erupted, or, I spoke shorter. I didn't mean to have that. Mom's energy was really low. Even if I feel it coming, I'll tell my kids, like, mom's energy was here before we went school shopping. Mom's energy is down here. So can you please go play with your toys? Give mom 10 minutes, and then I'll be so excited to hear about what you did at school today, or things like that. I'll kind of, if I feel it coming on, I'll give myself a little bit of grace, right? We're human. Moms do need a little, dads too. We need our 10 minutes to recharge before we're ready to go with them. But yeah, definitely, showing we're human, apologizing. We're showing them how to apologize. We don't want fake apologies, right? Where sibling hurts sibling and then you say sorry so we can move on. Like, we don't want those empty apologies. We want to be the example in having a meaningful, real apology.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, and I've learned this about myself. Like, so when I'm apologizing to my son about something that I shouldn't have done, and I might not apologize right away. I've got to chill out for a
Mhm.
little bit. It might
Sure.
be a couple hours later where I come up and I'm like, listen, I'm really sorry for acting that way. That was
Yeah.
unnecessary. I shouldn't have done that, but it
Yeah.
happened. And that's just what happens. This is what we do as humans. But at the same
Mhm.
time, it's taught me more grace with myself. Like, if I can have grace with my kids, I need to have
Mm.
grace with me. The less grace that I have with me, the less grace I have with my kids, and the less grace I have with anybody else. So
Yeah.
giving yourself that grace, and I think that if you're hard on yourself, which I don't know your history with yourself, but I've been incredibly hard on myself,
Yeah.
and so I can be incredibly hard on other people, and so it's helped me to have a perspective of like, geez, Rob, you could take a little pressure off. Things aren't that bad. Things are actually really good. You need to calm down, and
Yeah.
like putting this grace in and being like, that I need to take this, because when I give it to me, I then give it to others, and the people that you're going to give it to that have to deal with you, right? Your spouse has to deal with you, and your kids have to deal with you, but first you have to deal with you. So
Yeah.
how have you learned to better deal with yourself, and how has that changed things?
I follow a lot of, does it feel uncomfortable in my skin? What does it feel like for me? And I love the piece you're saying about giving grace to ourselves, because as we were talking about earlier with the highly sensitive person piece, the highly sensitive piece is those mindsets that we're having in our brains. If our kids are highly sensitive, they're most likely having those mindsets as well. So, like you said,
Mhm.
showing ourselves grace it's also teaching them how to have grace for themselves as well.
Yeah, 100%. It's so important. So this is great. I love what you're doing, and I love the fact that you have created a platform where you can talk about this and bring in experts who talk about this. So I just want to encourage everybody to check out the podcast, the Heart to Heart Parents podcast. So on any podcasting platform, also on YouTube, you can find it on there. Make sure you check out Carrie's platform of how to be a better parent, how to be a heart-to-heart parent. Anything you want to mention about the podcast or about the episodes and conversations that you've had that have been impactful for you?
Yeah, I think I have an episode that was one of my favorites, was on that inner child piece you and I were talking about. That's a little ways back in there. I can't remember the episode number because it was a couple of months ago. But this one I released today also, you might enjoy, is on highly sensitive kids and highly sensitive parents. So that was one with Melissa Schwartz that you might enjoy, cool. Rob.
I love it. So as we come to the close of this, has been wonderful. I really enjoyed talking to you. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you'd want to mention? Anything you want to leave the audience with before we sign off?
I think just don't forget, let's not be as hard on ourselves as you were talking about, giving ourselves grace. I love that. And giving our kids grace. We're all human. We're all going through this experience. And when we connect together, we really can feel it and feel that love in our families. Thanks so much, Rob.
Absolutely. For sure. Thank you, Carrie, for doing what you're doing. This has been another true testimony of breakthrough. This has been the Unstuck Movement.